So again, good morning. My name is Liz Hart, and I am the founder and executive director of Tailored for Success. And I want to welcome you to our workshop this morning. This is an important discussion with all the things that are going on post-COVID and just trying to navigate the different issues that come up with working right now. I want to thank you on behalf of the panelists and the moderator for being here and taking your time to join us for this discussion. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. This session is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. I asked if everyone could mute themselves unless they're speaking so that we can cut down on background noise. And the recording will be sent to all participants. And once again, please stay with us to the end because we do have a raffle at the end. And at this point, I would like to turn the program over to our moderator, Kathleen Parker, who is a partner at K&L Gates. Kathleen?
Thank you, Liz, and thank you everyone for joining. I know that even though Zoom makes things a little bit easier, it's hard to carve out time from your day, and we really appreciate you taking the time, and we hope that we can offer you some insightful advice. And as Liz mentioned, you can use the chat function to ask questions along the way. Hopefully we'll address everything, and then if not, we'll have some time at the end, hopefully, to answer questions and have a conversation too. And we do hope that this is more of a conversation among our panelists. That's kind of how we prepared it. And when we were planning this, we all started talking, and there is no shortage of information and of experience and thoughts on these topics that I know that every woman has. And hopefully the things that are shared today can help you. And, if you have any questions after, feel free to reach out to Liz and she can, funnel anything to us as well. But as Liz mentioned, I'm Kathleen Parker. I'm a partner in the labor and employment and litigation practice groups at K&L Gates, which is an international law firm. I work out of the Boston office, though right now I'm obviously at home and have been at home for some time now, popping back into the office every once in a while. But so it's definitely been a change. I have a almost 3-year-old daughter. And so that was obviously a very interesting time, early COVID, when her daycare shut down and we couldn't see grandparents or really anyone. And now she's back in school 3 days a week and we have some grandparent help, but we're still dealing with that as well. So it doesn't seem like we're all out of the woods yet. And it also seems like some of the things that COVID has created might persist for some period of time. Who knows when the new normal will be. So we hope that the advice and thoughts that come out of this panel can really be implemented while we remain remote, while the job market remains in flux and weakened, and then also that you can carry with you kind of throughout your careers and as you progress. So on our panel, we have some wonderful women that I think will offer a diverse view and diverse experience. So I'll start by introducing Kelly Rydell. Kelly is Director of Global Operations at Amazon Robotics. She's been in that position for 2 years, and before that was head of legal and has been with Amazon for a long time. So that is a company that I'm sure she has seen, grow over time and change over time, and then moving into the robotics, which is such a cool subset of Amazon and everything they do. And I'm sure people have really used Amazon during the pandemic. I know I have for sure. It's been a lifesaver. So thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us. Next is Kate Van Sleet. Kate is the Administrative Director of Legal and Business Affairs at WGBH, now GBH, which I'm sure everyone has watched their wonderful programming. And I've had the pleasure of working with Kate throughout most of my legal career at K&L Gates. I've had a few cases with GBH and worked with Kate and the people in her legal department, and it's a wonderful group. And Kate has been at GBH for 11 years and has had numerous positions there, kind of risen through the ranks to assume the position that she's now in of Administrative Director of Legal and Business Affairs. So thank you so much, Kate, for taking the time and being on the panel. And next we have Tara Clancy. Tara is a partner at K&L Gates. She is in the cybersecurity, privacy, and intellectual property practice groups. And Tara, I've known Tara obviously I've been at K&L for about 10 years. So I've known Tara for 10 years, but Tara has been at the firm for about 25, I think, which is, she has also seen some major changes at our firm. Our firm started out pretty small and has just kind of grown and expanded as Tara has also risen through the ranks up to partnership. And before that, she was an engineer at Procter & Gamble. So with that, thank you ladies all for joining. And like I said, I think we really want this to be kind of a conversation. So I have a few kind of prompting questions, but really the panelists are just going to kind of chat and don't be shy about putting some questions in the chat box or saving them for the end. I know sometimes I like to just type out a question and don't want to, be the speaker at the end, but anything is whatever you feel most comfortable with. We welcome you to just get your thoughts out as well. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to get the panelists' thoughts on was the issue of starting a new job or a new position within your job. So ladies, I was just wondering, what advice do you have for women who are starting out in a new job or taking a new position in their existing job or trying to seek out a new position in their existing job, especially in terms of making an early positive first impression, fitting in with company culture, figuring out company culture and starting to build an internal network within the company that might help you figure all those things out and also rise up within the company, especially in this remote world, in this potentially, staggered workforce world where not everyone is just in the office or in the workplace, 5 days a week at the same time. And you're also not necessarily able to be around people too much. And I think I'll start with Kelly on this one. And then, Tara and Kate can feel free to chime in.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kathleen, and a really important topic. I just want to double down on your welcoming of the panelists and repeat your comments about it being hard to carve out time for ourselves. And so thanks for taking this time for yourselves and thinking about this topic with us. And I will also just underscore what Liz said, which is we're happy to take any other questions and make this a conversation. But the question about starting a new job or a new role in your existing job is, first of all, congratulations, right? Like if that's your circumstance right now, you've gotten the job, you secured it, that's wonderful. It can be hard to do, it can be daunting to sort of apply for jobs and seek those promotions. And so congratulations, take a deep breath, you've got to that next step. And if you're looking for a job right now, or you're looking for that next role, keep going, right? Like it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of conversations, it takes finding the right fit. But it will come. And so whichever side of that line you're on, certainly congratulations and keep going. But if you are in that new job, a few thoughts I have. First, Kathleen, you foreshadowed this, but you have to find a network. And so those early days of figuring out who are your stakeholders, who benefits from your work, who's your internal customer, who are your external customers, who do you share those customers with? So really looking around the company and saying, why did they hire this role, or why did they give this promotion? Who's going to benefit from what I do? Who needs me to change something? So you can really understand the landscape of like, who's invested in your success. If you do your job really well, who is better for it? Those people are going to be your champions. And you really need to figure out, what do they need and what do they need from you? And then you can start with that knowledge, and that's a network, right? Those people are already invested in your success because they need the results of whatever it is you're doing. And so figure out who those people are. Secondly, I think people generally, my very strong opinion is people generally want to help each other. And so reaching out to people to sort of say, hey, I'm new, or I just took a step up role and I'm figuring things out, or I don't know this company and I'm working from home, and really just being a bit vulnerable to say, here's the help I'm looking for. My experience along my entire career is if you're open about that with people, 9.9 out of 10 people are going to help you. And that other 0.1, they get figured out eventually. People that don't help people are often not the ones folks gravitate to, right? So there are helpers everywhere if you're just a bit candid about what you're looking for. And then Kathleen, you asked about the culture, and I think that's a really important question, is like, what is the culture of the place you're in? So as Kathleen said, I work for Amazon. We are so benefited by the fact that we write our culture down. So we call it our leadership principles. If you are interested in them, they're on Amazon's website. I think it's wherever I ever work, I will take those leadership principles with me. They're just a good way to do work. They talk about earning trust and having bias for action and having backbone and delivering results. So our culture is written down, which makes it really easy. But you may be in a place where that's not so easy and the culture is not written down. So you don't know all those hidden rules, but they're knowable. People that work there know them. And so just make that one of your questions that you ask when you meet people. Is like, can you tell me a little bit about how to be successful here? Find the people who seem to be successful and ask them, how have you been successful here? Think through some questions like, what's the best way here to disagree with things, right? Like, do you tell your manager? Do you write it down? Like, it's important to know when you're in a place like what the best way to disagree with things is. Does hierarchy matter? Like, is it a company where everybody's voice is all in, or is it a company that you should go to your manager who goes to their manager? That distinction is important. You can succeed either way, but you kind of have to know what the right way in the company is. But people who have been there for a while know that, and most people are willing to tell you. And then my final piece of advice is just give yourself some time, especially during this COVID. If you're remote, trying to figure all these things out at once, it's not possible. So have these conversations over time, write down what you learned so you can later reflect on all the inputs you've gotten from a diverse set of people, so you can find your own truth in that. And just give yourself a little bit of patience, a little bit of grace as you figure it out. Nobody expects you to ramp up on day one. Yeah, just have some patience.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I think the hierarchy thing is very interesting too, because you do see workplaces changing and becoming much more open, but sometimes, I mean, at least at K&L Gates, we have a very collegial atmosphere. It's very much open door, but there are still some, senior partners that I don't think a first year associate should go, knocking on their door and asking them about, the printer or something, or even, or a very basic writing assignment or something like that. So I do think it's important to find people, and I also always find too, if you are at a certain level, I always like to talk to people that are, your peers, but also the people that might be subordinate to you or below you or something, whatever, however the hierarchy works. If you're mid-level, talk to the person that's more junior, but has maybe been there a little bit longer, or, anyone basically that's been at the firm, don't get hung up on, oh, well, they're not, a senior person, so they're not going to know what I'm talking about. Because the people that are really kind of the base of the company are the people that are going to know what it's like and are going to be the most helpful in my experience. So hierarchy is an interesting thing when you're looking for support. I mean, some of my biggest mentors early on in my career at the firm were the legal assistants. I would call them my early mentors for sure. I wouldn't have survived and succeeded if I didn't have my legal assistants that provided me that information and support. So I think not getting caught up in the hierarchy in that way is also important to think about. Kate, do you have anything to add, especially given that you've started a few new positions at GBH and really changed your career over time?
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with Kelly's advice. In my experience, I think also not just going through the hierarchy and getting to know those that are sort of more subordinate to you and those that are perhaps a little bit further up in the hierarchy than you, but also where I work is a very diverse set of tasks that we do at GBH. We do all kinds of things across many different platforms. And so what has been very successful for me is getting to know people across the organization.
Wow.
So not just, whether or not somebody is in a different, level job than you, but also, what are people doing across the organization in different departments, and really getting to know and building those relationships, because you never know as you're going through your career who you are going to need as allies in those groups across the organization. So that has been something that I really focused on when I started at GBH. And GBH is a very big organization doing a lot of different things. So it was definitely a challenge to get to know everybody across the organization, but that has helped me tremendously as I go about what I'm doing. So that's something that I would just emphasize. And the other thing I would say is, once you are established in your particular role, or as you've been there a little bit, to remember what it's like for those after you that are starting their jobs and their careers, their career path in your organization. And remembering that, I think, goes a long way, because Kathleen, you spoke about having, legal assistants as your mentors early on, but you can be that mentor for others coming after you. And so that's just something I always, even though I've been at GBH for 11 years, which, believe it or not, I am still the new person in my department, because we've had people in my department there 40 plus years. But I always remember what it was like when I started, so that as new people join in, whatever department they're coming in from, that they, are getting that benefit as well. I mean, at the end of the day, people love to talk about what they do. They just want to be asked, what do you do? How do you work here at this organization? And 9 times out of 10, they would love to talk about that. And that's really, soak that up. That's really how you learn how to navigate in an organization.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to Kelly's point too, about the internal network versus the external network, and the internal client versus the external client. Especially, as lawyers, we have external clients, obviously, but every other lawyer that we work with is also our client. And every person you work with, basically, you can kind of think of as your client. No matter what your job is, you're kind of in client services, because you're always servicing someone else other than you within the company. And that becomes, that I think is a helpful way to think of it. What would you want from client service if you were the client, and thinking of, what deliverable should I give this person that they can then use most effectively, and makes their lives easier internally. So it's almost like we're all in client services when you're at a company, because you're servicing, and then your network does expand so much. And while GBH, people stay for 40 years, and I know why, because it's a wonderful organization. But the truth of the matter is, there's so much more mobility, right, in our world than, in our parents or grandparents' job situations, where people did stay for a long period of time at one place. So you never know where someone else is going to go too. So building that internal network is really so beneficial. So I think those are great points. Tara, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say don't sell yourself short when you're starting the process, whether it's for a new job or whether it's looking for a job within your current company. And I feel like I see this all the time, especially with women. Excuse me, Dennis, I know you're on the call as well. But I think as women, you look at the qualifications that a particular position is asking for. And if you don't check off every single box, you feel like, well, then I shouldn't be applying for that, or I shouldn't try for that, whether it's a starting position or a position somewhere down the road. And that's a mistake, because I can tell you your male counterparts are not doing that. The other thing is, don't sell yourself short in terms of your career planning. There are many times when I'm talking with folks and they'll say, well, I'm only going to be in this position for a couple of years, and then I'm going to switch horses, or I'm going to plan to have a family, or what have you. So I'm not going to look for that next position or that next promotion, because in their back of their mind, they're thinking about what their life is going to be. And my advice would be, don't do that. You don't know what your life is going to be. And just because you may be making certain choices, that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for the top in your current situation. And so go for that. Don't put up barriers just because you're making certain assumptions or putting some hurdles that may or may not come to pass. The other thing that I would say is, I've been doing hiring for decades, I hate to admit. And I am not always looking for the person that has the best qualifications. I'm looking for the person that is going to be the best for the position and fit within the team. So that interview, that first meeting is so critical. Do your research. Make sure you know what the job is, what the company is, so that you can be engaging. Because that's one of the first things that I feel is like a huge negative. If someone hasn't researched where I'm working to know what they're interviewing for, it's kind of like, why are you wasting my time if you're not even going to take the time to figure out what the position is? So do some of your homework as best as you can so you can be an engaging interviewee. And I always remember like some of my best interviews where I got offers that I was shocked about was when it was a conversation. I felt like the interviewee or the interviewer was doing a heck of a lot more talking than I was. They weren't asking me any questions. And I was like, oh, that didn't work. They have no knowledge about me. But yet the interview was casual. It was engaging. The interviewer felt good at the end of it. And I tended to get the offer. So when you have that kind of banter and just be yourself, be confident. It's fine to say you don't know the answer to specific questions. It's also fine to have like a notebook and questions that you want to ask, so you're not relying on memory, and to refer to those, because it just shows that you're prepared. It doesn't mean anything negative. So I think if you take just a very confident approach, don't sell yourself short, you're going to find that there are going to be more options that will open up to you, whether it's in promotions or getting that first job or a new position.
Yeah, Tara, I'd love to jump in there. I think that is all such excellent advice. And if I could just go to the top of your comments, because it struck me that the research that shows that women will wait until they have 100% of the job qualifications and men won't. So that advice is exactly right that Tara's offering, and sort of research over and over will show that. And I think one thing I would love to add to that is know each of us has a superpower. Like I genuinely believe each of us has a thing or a small set of things that we are just excellent at, that it helps us solve problems over our life, in our personal lives, in our volunteer lives, in our work lives. It's gotten us out of a pickle. Like it is just what we are exceptional at. That's one of your bullets. So you may not have all 6 of the requirements that they put in the job description, but you have something that you're going to bring to your next job that nobody is as good as you at, that you are just really good at. I would encourage everybody to take a little bit of time to think about, like, what is that for you? And I think if you kind of think about every time you've been successful in a bunch of different places for a bunch of different reasons, like my hunch is that this is the thing that has shown up for you. Know what that is, so that when you do your research, as Tara has advised wisely, and you know what the job is, and you know what the requirements are, you can also bring to bear this information that the interviewer doesn't know about what you're always good at. Maybe you're a really good problem solver. Maybe you earn trust really well with people, so you always can charge through challenges. Whatever, maybe you're super, super analytical. You're excellent with numbers, whatever it is, but like make sure you know what your kind of superpower is, so you can share that in the interview and say, like, here is something that I don't have bullets 5 and 6. You're never going to find anybody as good as me at this thing, right? Because everybody has something that's like super special about them. It's important to know what yours is.
Yeah, and being able to articulate that kind of succinctly in an interview, and having like your canned thing that you just open up, that's your thing, and just, the fundamental things about interviewing, since we have touched upon that a little bit. And I know some people might be searching for jobs right now. When putting together your resume, the best way to make sure that it is more of a conversation too is just making sure that you can talk about everything on your resume, and kind of the couple things you're going to highlight about absolutely everything on your resume. If there's something on your resume that, yeah, you did, but it wasn't really that important or that relevant, or, it doesn't fill a gap in time, it wouldn't be weird to leave it off. Just leave it off, because, you could get an interviewer that sees that one thing and that's all they want to talk about. And if you can't talk about it, that's, not ideal. So I think, being sure that you're really making sure that your resume is evolving over time and you're just not like putting it in a folder and pulling it out for every job application is also really important. You know, tailoring your resume to the position or tailoring your job application to the position that you're seeking. And just making sure that you have those kind of couple sentences that will do what Kelly said, kind of highlight your strengths, and also potentially, you know, prompt further conversation. It is really key, really sifting through that resume. And also remembering, as Tara said, and as I think we've shown from this panel, like people love to talk, and people that are interviewing love to talk about themselves, really. They also are, if they're interviewing you, they're also trying to sell the company to you. If you've gotten an interview, that means that, you know, there's something about you that they are interested in. So they want to talk about the company as well. And like Tara said, I think that when people get out of an interview and they've done most of the talking, they'll have a positive impression of you because they like are psyched about what they talked about themselves. So I think that's just kind of human nature, especially people that are tasked with doing interviews, like to hear themselves talk and like to talk about their experiences. So, you know, as much as however you can, you know, make that the interview is, I think, beneficial for you.
It also might, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
No, please. Go.
Kathleen, I just want to underscore that tailoring your resume and cover letter to the job, because that is something that we look at a lot when we hire individuals in our department. Is this, you know, we avoid the resumes and cover letters that are sort of a one size fits all, right? They obviously are blasting, you know, dozens of different jobs with the same resumes, hopefully cover letters. I mean, in our department, we don't even look at a resume without a cover letter. So cover letters are so important for what we do. It says so much about an individual, about how they can write, how they're analyzing the job description and describing how they would fit in that particular role. I mean, those are so important in our world anyway. And so I can't underscore that enough, that it really does show a lot of initiative when an individual goes and reads the job description, finds, to Kelly's point, their superpower in that job description, and does the work of fitting themselves in the company in the cover letter, because that is all part of the research of knowing what job you're applying for and how you might fit into this organization. It shows that you're already, you know, doing that analysis and that work, you know, to the individual who's going to be interviewing you. So in our world, that is everything when you're applying for a job.
Yeah.
And Kathleen, if I could build off what you were talking about with respect to your resume too, everything on your resume gives you certain skills that you can apply to that next job. I mean, I remember working as an assembly line worker at Estee Lauder. And I remember when I was applying for engineering jobs, I tried to figure out, well, what did I learn in that position that's going to help me try to get this job now at Procter & Gamble as an engineer? And all of your jobs have some nugget that you can then apply. You just need to think about that ahead of time. And to Kathleen's point, if it's on your resume, make sure you understand the purpose for its being there for the particular job that you're then interviewing for, so that you have that nugget that you will take from that particular position if someone asks you about it, so that you can relate it to the position you're about to go for.
Tara, that reminds me, I saw this quote recently that said, it's okay to start over because this time you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. And I think exactly what you're saying is that, is like, don't underestimate the culmination of all the experiences you had, even the worst ones, even the ones that you would say, I wish I didn't have to think about that experience. It taught you something. So I think you're right. And I also just want to, Kathleen, in response to your comment of like, interviews may be best if you can get the other person talking and have them feel good, and that's human nature. I agree with you. I'd also point everyone to Tara's advice on do research about the company, because I'm coming from just one company, and you might have seen my shock when Kate said the cover letter is so important there, because it's not here. So each company is, it's not at Amazon, so each company is different. But I will say doing research, and there's so many sources of research on the internet. There's Glassdoor, there's other people, there's blogs, but really understanding what the company is like in an interview. Because again, like one experience, I just work at one company, but Amazon's interview experience is really focused on gathering data from the candidate. It's very interactive. We're looking for very particular mapping to our leadership principles that I described. So certainly true if you go to one place, that may be a good strategy. If you go to another, it's not. And the answer to that, like how you tie those things together and make them both true, is plugging in Tara's advice, which is do your research, know who you're talking to, know what they're looking for, and then you can tailor your approach to that place.
Yeah, I mean, you have a real life example of that. I mean, a GBH is extremely different than an Amazon.
Right.
And so, you know, you've definitely just gotten the example of why that's important. You know, I would not prepare for my GBH interview the same way I'd prepare for my Amazon interview. So that's great advice. And thanks for kind of wrapping that all up and tying that together, Kelly. So
one second,
Sure.
Kathleen, before,
Yeah.
because what Kelly just said just triggered something else. Do the research, but also understand companies are doing their research too. And the internet, social media, there is a ton of information that is out there about candidates. And you want to be aware of what is out there about you to make sure that that's going to be putting you in the best light. So just be very, very mindful of that too. It's a different day and age today.
Yeah, for sure. We didn't have to deal with years of TikTok or Instagram or whatever
Thank goodness.
on the internet when, you know, so make all that stuff private before you apply to any job. So moving on then, so now that we're in this kind of remote world and we don't know how long we're going to be in it, you know, we might be in it for forever, for at least in some capacity in some jobs. But also in person, you know, women tend to have different body language. We have different way of speaking, obviously, than men. We can't help our voices. We can't help the cadence of our speech. And also we can't help the fact that, you know, the clothes that we have to wear are different than men, and men can just, you know, pull on a suit or a shirt, and we've got a lot more options that can lead to a lot more mistakes, I guess. So in terms of all that and kind of the added pressure, I think that women face in that respect, and the added judgment that we faced, even if people are implicitly or not judging us on purpose by that thing, but having this kind of natural reaction to women because of, you know, our voices or our clothes or our body language. Do you have any advice, and what have you done in your career to kind of account for this? And how have you dealt with it in this increasingly remote world with the whole issue of, you know, Zoom body language or Zoom presence? And also, you know, speaking up on Zooms can be a little bit more difficult. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? And I think I'll start with Tara for this one.
Yeah, I think until you really understand the culture of where you are and who you're dealing with, the best starting approach is the conservative business approach, because that typically won't get you into any kind of, you know, trouble. I mean, looking at everybody's picture, you know, that is shown on this Zoom call, whether we like it or not, there are going to be certain perceptions that people will take from what they see about how you look, what's in your background, and you just need to be mindful of that. So for instance, right now I am sitting in my kitchen. If I were going to be in a meeting with folks that were either high-level clients or people that were way above me, I don't think I would have as my background my kitchen, because I wouldn't want to perpetuate that potential impression that this is where a woman belongs, in the kitchen. And I know that's old school, but I would be more mindful of my background. And I might do what Kate has done, where you have, you know, more of a standard background. If I was going to be working with maybe creative people, I think Kelly's background is awesome with that background. So it's just being mindful of not only how you present yourself, but also what is shown in your background. And quite frankly, as a cybersecurity person, Kate's background is the way to go, just because you never want anyone seeing anything about your personal life and your background. That said, I also think, you know, looking attentive, particularly if it's a department meeting, a business meeting, whether it's with coworkers or subordinates or folks, your bosses, you want to make sure that you're giving the impression that you care, you're prepared, you're not being looking down so it's clear that you're doing something else, you're on the phone. You just really need to make sure that you're present for the meeting and that you're going to contribute to the meeting. And think about when someone is talking, if they're just staring at a bunch of blank faces or they look down, it's hard to keep talking. I teach a course, and it's when I look out at my students and I see them all looking down, it's like, all right, I'm not doing my job. I got to get people back engaged. It's like brutal. But when you find the one person, whether it's on a Zoom call or in class, it's actually looking at you and kind of nodding and giving you interaction. Again, that gives that person a good feeling. So be that active participant. And then I think, the other thing that it always struck me, and I remember when I was a young engineer going into these large scale meetings and watching where people sat and who spoke first, who spoke last, that type of thing. And it was always interesting to me that the folks who tended to have power or authority always sat at the far end away from the door so that they were facing the door. It's the power seat, whether we like it or not. If you're facing with your back to the door, you're putting yourself in a subordinate role. And once when I realized that, I was like, all right, I got to start making sure I'm positioning myself around the table, because my friend and I actually did an experiment. When we were with our back to the door and we had something to say in the meeting, we were interrupted more. People didn't really listen to us. But when we took power seats, all of a sudden that seemed to change. Now, it could have been our ideas were coincidentally bad when we were on the other side of the table. I don't know. But be mindful of how you position yourself, what kind of role you want to take at the meeting, and think about that as well. Is this a meeting where you should just sit and actively listen just because of the dynamics of who's in the room? Or is this a meeting where you should be an active participant? And know that going in. Don't go into a meeting, especially when there's an opportunity for you to showcase skills, not being prepared and not having a goal, so that you can become recognized.
Tara, I think that's great advice. I'd love to offer on the first part, just an alternate view on the how we dress. Kathleen, your point about maybe those things are judged, whether fairly or unfairly. My alternate perspective here is when we work, we have to be comfortable. We have to feel totally within our body and our confidence. We're going to do our best thinking when we're feel wholly ourselves. And so to the extent it feels comfortable to you, I would offer you, like, you be you. You wear what you want so that you feel comfortable. If you want to wear a suit and tie because a suit and tie is what feels right, that's what you should wear. If you want to wear brightly colored hair and fancy jewelry because that allows you to express your creative self and that makes you feel comfortable and confident to speak your best ideas and your clearest mind, then go ahead and do that. The consequence may be exactly as Kathleen said, that some recipients of those things feel like that's kind of off standard. Then it may be that wasn't the right workplace for you anyway, right? So there's some natural matching that happens there. So I think that's sort of an alternate view of, do you try to match the culture and the look of the place, or do you feel strongly about your own sort of culture and look and style, and you're going to bring that when you go to work there anyway, so you might as well bring it right to the interview and be completely confident in your own presentation. But then I think absolutely what Tara said is the you have to show up wholly. So the reason I offered that first advice is so that you can show up wholly and confidently and in your own skin and your own presentation. But then you have to do those things that Tara said, such as asking those questions and having your voice heard and making sure you're paying attention and you're engaged and you're not this like passive in the back of the room or not participating or whatever. And so I guess my view to this one would be bring your whole self completely. And that may mean whatever style that is, but it also may mean speaking up, like speaking your mind, even if your voice shakes a little bit because you're nervous, and answering the question and sitting in the power seat. Tara, I had actually never heard of that. And I can tell you right now, my seat forevermore has changed. I'm going to find that seat. So thank you for that. But I would offer just that alternative is figure out what's important to you and do that unwaveringly so that you can continue to be confident.
I just also add to that, this is also part of your fact finding mission when you start a job, right? So I will never forget one of my colleagues pulling me aside in the ladies' room, because of course I started, working at GBH, which is a nonprofit, very relaxed company. I didn't know that going in. And of course, I was wearing suits every day, like I would have done in my job prior to that. And I'll never forget one of my colleagues pulling me aside and saying, it's great if that's what you want to wear, but don't feel like you have to wear that, because this is the way this company is. It's been this way for decades. I just want to give you a heads up. If you want to dress in a more comfortable style because you would prefer that, don't feel like you have to do that. And that was, for me, was wonderful. I mean, I was a young mother. I absolutely did not want to wear suits every day and worry about dry cleaning and all these other things. So for me, that was like a huge relief. And I made sure after that happened to me that every other woman that started after me that I interacted with had that same advice. It's great if you want to wear it. If you're a very stylish person and that's how you want to be, awesome. But don't feel like you have to be that way in this company, because here's the general, culture in this organization, just to provide that sense of relief, which was huge as a mom of a 6-month-old at that time.
Yeah.
So I was loving that.
Those are the helpers.
Yeah. And I would say,
helpers.
yeah,
always
exactly.
the helpers.
Yeah.
100%.
Find them. They're there.
And until you find those people, or if it's not, readily apparent, I would say err on the side of Kate. I think you always want to be told, oh, you don't have to wear that suit, or you don't have to wear those slacks and that button down. You can actually, then you really got to wear a suit. Why are you wearing khaki pants or something, So until I think I think it's safer to err on the side of being more formally dressed. If you don't know what the situation is at the company. But yeah, every time I would go to meetings at GBH in my suit, I would always feel like I was, a Secret Service member, the FBI or something coming in but yeah, so it's important to know the culture for sure.
And gosh, help the ladies behind you know that, because that to me was a huge relief.
Kate, I think that's broader advice too. I mean, certainly on this topic, but I think all of us should take away as women, every step forward you take, you put your hand back and you help another woman take a step forward, right? That is our, I think, sort of duty to each other. So it's a good point, Kate. And it sounds like you've done that repeatedly at GBH, and probably the women behind you are better for it. So it's
well, I'm a mother of 3 daughters, so I am very mindful of that advice myself. So
that's great.
So definitely that is always top of mind for me.
Great. So moving on, I mean, I think this conversation has shown women are naturally just collaborative. We like to give people credit for things. We like to have it be a team effort. And studies have shown, and I have experienced, that might not be the case with men as much. We're talking obviously in broad categories here. So, but that's all we can do at this point. And I think, we can all probably find within ourselves that there's some truth to all of this in our experiences and personally. So that is great. And I think that studies have also shown that women extremely valuable workers. It makes women dominated teams have better results because there's more of an exchange of ideas. But it can also, on the more negative side, can lead sometimes to women not being given credit for things, women's voices being drowned out, women's ideas being taken by men, maybe slightly tweaked and then adopted as their own and presented as their own. So I'll start with Kate on this one. How have you, experienced this? Have you experienced this in your career, I guess? And then if so, kind of how have you overcome this? And how do you think women, or I guess, really anyone can positively assert themselves in their positions and then promote themselves and be kind of their biggest cheerleaders within their career as they either look for a new job or look to rise within the ranks at their current job?
That is an excellent question, Kathleen. And I have to say, I really struggled with this because I am a natural helper, right? I want to please people. That's just my nature. And so for me, this was something I really had to overcome in my own career to sort of advance where I was going, because I have experienced that where you work really hard on a project and then at the very end, it's a given the credit is given to, the male lead or whoever it is that's been more vocal on the team. So this is something that I'm very mindful of myself. The first thing I would say that I've done to sort of help mitigate that is I always work on being the expert on whatever the project is, knowing all the details, not necessarily in a micromanaging kind of way, but in a way that makes you feel very confident about what you're speaking to for that particular project. So to the extent you're able, be the expert, know the details, know exactly what is going on in the project at all times. Not that you have to manage it, but that you know that it's happening. So you can always speak to those above you, those below you, and in the hierarchy in terms of what's going on in the project. So that's one thing I would say. And then the other thing I would say is if your nature is to be a problem solver, be the problem solver. Find where the problems are, think creatively, think out of the box, and be known as the problem solver. And that's something that we talked about very early on in this conversation about, knowing who your allies are, who in the organization can help you through solving some of these problems. It's that network again within your organization to sort of help you, along the way for your particular project. So those would be kind of the two ways that I've kind of overcome this. I think it's very natural for women to, always sort of step back and have that, subordinate role, in our history. And so you really do have to, build your own confidence with your knowledge to overcome that.
And with Kate, off of Kate's, recommendation for kind of being the expert, also don't be afraid if you don't know the answer. I
100%.
think women get afraid sometimes to speak up in a meeting or in a situation because, as we've kind of touched on with the resume issue and not feeling prepared for the job, we think, well, if I don't know absolutely every possible thing about this topic, I can't speak up on it, because what if someone asks me a question I don't know the answer to? And that's okay. Figure out what feels natural for you and how to respond if you don't know the answer. Oh, I'm not quite sure on that. I'll look right into that and get back to you, that type of thing. So that you're not kind of silencing yourself. You're doing the work to become the expert and know how you can contribute in a meeting, how you can speak up. But if you can't, or if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Not everyone doesn't know the answer to everything. The answers are usually, readily accessible, readily available on the internet, and no one really expects you to have it all in your brain. So don't be afraid of that either.
I think also just knowing that where you can find the answer is huge. Like in my world, it's, yeah, of course, we don't know all the answers, but, I'll talk to this person in finance that I have a relationship with to get that answer, or I'll connect with this person in HR that I have a relationship with to get that answer. So it's really building up those networks where, yeah, sure, you don't know all the answers, but you know how to get those answers.
Yeah. I found that one way we can, Kathleen, you say sort of like, just be more confident when you don't know the answer. I've found that even just small language shifts, like using the word thank you rather than I'm sorry or I'm like, I feel bad. So it's like, if you don't know the answer, thanks a lot for pointing that out. Great question. I'll find out. If you are late, instead of saying, I'm sorry, thank you for waiting for me, I was delayed, right? So just figuring out where, instead of feeling small because you don't know, or you did something wrong, or you made a mistake, or you don't have the experience, thanks for pointing that out. I haven't done that before. I'll look into it, right? Just thanking the person for the input, again, taps into that idea that most people want to help. Most people want to feel valuable. So now you've said thank you to them and pointed out their benefit, and you can't know everything. You can't never make a mistake. It's truly an impossible goal. And so just thanking the person for highlighting a gap and then going to fill the gap, I think allows you to feel a lot more confident in, okay, I'll fix it. You pointed out a mistake, I'll fix the mistake. You asked me a question I didn't know, I'll find the answer. It's okay. Right. And so filling that gap with a thank you instead of something that makes you feel more downhill or diminished as a result of it.
Yeah, and I also think that, the great points, but I also think, one of the things that I think women are really good at is collaboration.
Yeah.
And teamwork. I mean, that is typically a real strength. And it's, in my career, I've always found that teamwork is fine. I'm very happy when people on my team are getting credit. Even if an idea came from me, I really don't care about that. It's if the team is overall meeting the objective and is successful, that's a win. But I do think there are times that you have to make sure that the people who are figuring out who's going to be right for the next position or a promotion knows that you're adding value. And I have always ascribed to the tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them type of rule. So that they are reminded that, okay, this is what my plan is. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. And then I'm telling you as I'm doing it. And then when it's done, I'm telling you that I did it. This way, it's like people work in threes, and it's a way to make sure that you're seen as the person who is moving the ball. And it's an easy way to just get the point across in a I don't think women are generally good at, no, it was me, I did it kind of role, but it's a way to do it in a constructive, meeting the business objective way.
Kate,
I will say that I know this is a 2020 thing. I will say too, don't forget those people who are contributing to a project as well, who are contributing ideas that are thoughtful, solving problems. It goes a long way when you get to a supervisory role to acknowledge that in the moment. And that is also sort of reaching down, grabbing them, pulling them up with you. And that's something that I wish I would see more of in general within organizations, that acknowledgement that somebody has contributed meaningfully to a project.
And you can be that person, right? You can set that culture. I'm sure, Kate, I'm taking a guess. I don't know your work at TBH, but I'm sure when you started doing that, somebody else saw, wow, that's great. That's a good look. That's teamwork. It's collaborative. It makes people feel good. I'm going to do that too, right? And then you start to set this is what we do here. We say thank you for people's contributions, participation, successes. And so you can be the one to lead that way.
So this kind of leads in, Kelly touched a little bit about, mistakes and how to address them. And there's actually, if you Google, I've seen it just going around, there's like lists of phrases that people say kind of in line with what Kelly was bringing up with the I'm sorry, or, sorry for the delay, and then ways to say it differently. And I thought it was fascinating because I was just checking off all the ones that I say. And then I wrote an email that I tried to tweak per this list that I found. And it definitely came across as stronger, more assertive. And I think something that, we can all learn from. So I recommend that you Google that, and you can find good lists to print out, because it's really become kind of a fascinating thing that people are really identifying, I guess, in all their free time during lockdown. But Kelly brought up, addressing mistakes or errors, and that kind of leads to our last topic. So women do tend to dwell on their mistakes, I think, a little bit more than men, it seems. They let it define them. They think that everyone's constantly using it to define them when they look at them. And just, to be frank, men seem to just kind of like brush it off and move on, and doesn't bother them as much. And I know I've personally been in this situation. And I just wonder, I'll start back with Kelly again, loop back to Kelly. What have you found to be kind of the most effective way of overcoming a mistake or coming back from a past mistake or error in your career, and addressing it in a way with your superiors or with your colleagues that that shows that you care about it and that you're not brushing it off or trying to avoid it or skirt responsibility for it, but where you're kind of acknowledging it in an effective way and then moving on.
Yeah. Kathleen, I think that's a great question. I would divide the mistakes, and I have made millions, so I have a large data set here, but I would divide them into two buckets. If you harmed somebody in any way, whether intentionally or unintentionally, fess up, fix it, apologize. If your mistake has caused somebody else some negative consequence, you are a good human. You will remain a good human despite your successes or your mistakes. You have to do the right good human thing. So fess up as soon as you know about it, fix it as soon as you can to the best of your ability, and say you're sorry to the person that it jammed up in any way. If it didn't and you made a mistake, take the learnings and move on. You have to do that. We cannot be bogged down by errors. We will make errors. That's part of learning. If you never make an error, I can promise you it is because you are not operating at the maximum of your potential. So you should just take it as proof that you are operating at, in that stretch role, in that next assignment, in that trying beyond your current capabilities. That's learning. And so as long as no one was harmed as a result, take the lesson, fix it to the best you can, put it in your, in your quiver, put the arrow in your quiver of like, now I learned something about how not to do it, and keep going. There is no sense getting bogged down by mistakes because another one's coming is the news. Right? We will do that. That's how we learn. Kate, you mentioned you have 3 kids. I've got 2 little ones at home too. Look at kids. They fall down. They learn to walk, they fall down. What if they just sat on the ground every time they fell, right? Of course they don't. That's silly. They would never consider just sitting on the ground when they're learning to walk. They get up and they keep going. So I think we can all learn something from that exact model.
I'd just like to add to that, Kelly, that, own it. Don't engage in the blame game of trying to find whoever it is that may have contributed to the, to the issue. Own it. If it's your mistake, own it. I see that a lot in, all the places I've worked where there's just, I think that's just human nature, right? You have an inclination to look for somebody else to pass it to, but if it is your mistake, own it. Cause I think that goes a long way, in terms of if you are harming somebody, that goes a long way to that apology and to fixing it, right?
Okay, that's why I divided them too, because I also think I worry that sometimes we think that we have to announce it or raise our hand and say, hey, this mistake happened. And most times we don't, right? If you could just, the ball dropped, but you can pick up the ball and keep walking, sometimes it just doesn't actually even need an announcement. Like you care a lot, you think a lot, but does anybody around you really need you to announce this mistake? If it's recoverable and you can just sort of pick it up and fix it and keep going, I'd encourage you to ask yourself that question, because I do think that there's this subconscious burden to announce it and make sure it's known, but often it's not needed. Often the fix is what is needed. And so I'm not suggesting that anybody hide a mistake, but I think that we need less announcement than we originally think. As long as it can be sort of like, state it, fix it, keep going, learn from it. I think there's more speed in that transition than sometimes we think.
Yeah, and I'll touch on with mistakes, or I'll put it even in terms of improvement areas. In my industry, we do regular performance reviews, and it is always shocking to me, again, to see the difference between men and women in this process. We have folks fill out a self-evaluation, and again, to Kathleen's point, it's a generalization, but it's an amazing one that seems to pan out every year. Again, I'm in the legal profession. The men seem to think they're ready for the Supreme Court. Focus on some mistake that they made, some improvement area that they think about in order to, improve upon it and be honest about it. And so I equate it to like a football analogy. Someone can run 90 yards from the other side's goal line and get tackled on the 10-yard line, and they're not focusing on the 90 yards that they just ran, they're focusing on the 10 they didn't.
Yes.
I think as women, we need to take a step back from that and recognize the successes that you do bring to the table, the skills that you do bring to the table. It's always important to recognize improvement areas because that's the only way you're going to learn and grow, but they don't deserve the amount of attention that they sometimes get. And I'll give you this example. in your life, when you have major disappointments, think of how it can sometimes wreck you. The flip side of that is when you have a major achievement, it's almost like, well, that was expected, move on. We don't feel it the same way we feel a disappointment. And I think we have to do a heck of a lot better in getting balance and, in fact, getting our achievements in that higher level so that we're recognizing our strengths and moving on. We're always going to have improvement areas. Let's not focus on them so much.
Tara, I just want to point out, Lisa asked a question. I think you may have just in part answered it, so I'll just underscore it. For the group who's not looking at the chat, Lisa asked, can you touch on when you're not recognized and how to address it? So when you move forward, you get recognition. And Tara just pointed out lots of jobs, lots of companies have some sort of performance review twice a year, on your anniversary, once a year, usually something exists. I encourage you to keep a list of like your highlights, your sort of top 10 moments, your highlights, your wins. You can talk about it at those times. You can talk about it more regularly if you have one-on-ones with your manager or touch bases or whatever the culture of your place is. But to Tara's point, there usually is a time where it's expected that you tell all of your successes, and making sure you're capturing that catalog, even if nobody's capturing it for you, so that you do your boss the favor of keeping that sort of record so that they don't have to do that work, right? It's something that you can do. It's a service to your boss. It's also a service to yourself, and will ensure that recognition at least has some airtime.
I also think, Lisa, there's ways that you can, if you're in a meeting, you know, again, whether it's a team meeting, one-on-one, where you're not asking for recognition, but you're communicating perhaps project status, work status, whatever it is, so that you're showing that this was my responsibility and I want to let you know it's done. And you can always also turn it so that it's effective not only for then the next step of whatever that is, just to, now that's completed, so now we can move on to the next phase. Whatever it is, you can position it. But there's nothing wrong with communicating those kind of statuses and completions so that people recognize that you did what you said you were going to do or were responsible for doing, versus just sitting back.
Yeah, and if it's appropriate, you know, ask your supervisor if you can be the one to give the update. Like if there's a meeting and it's appropriate for you to be the one to give the update on the project, you give it because you did the work. And oftentimes, you know, people at a certain level are the ones doing the work, but aren't the ones that are telling people about the work. And I think, you know, if you are the one presenting on the work, you're naturally given in someone's mind, you know, oh, well, they're the one that did the work, you know, I can go to them directly with questions, you know. So if it's appropriate, ask for that opportunity and prepare for that opportunity so that you're not relying on someone else to give you credit for something. Did anyone else have other questions? I don't know if there are any other in the chat box.
No, Kathleen, there's no other in the chat, but I do want to make sure that I give all the panelists this comment by our one male participant today, Dennis Pellegrino, who said that he wants to express his appreciation for this wonderful panel. And he was in attendance today to learn and appreciates the advice that was shared. So, you know, I echo that too. Thank you all for your expertise and sharing a lot of things that I hear myself saying in webinars and workshops and in mentoring people, and to hear it from other people makes me think that, okay, maybe I am on the right track and that, you know, this is what I'm saying is actually true and what people are using. So thank you.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, at least I've seen a shift personally, I think in the last couple of years with women. Really, not only are, you know, there more and more women in the workforce, I think kind of that have been in the workforce for a while and are rising within their companies, but I just think there's been such a focus on women bringing up and raising up other women and sharing our experiences. So I think don't feel afraid to grab onto that. I know personally, I've felt, you know, being a woman is like so much more important now than it ever was to me in the past. I don't know if it's because of my age or because I have a almost 3-year-old daughter or what, I don't know, but something has shifted, and I've seen it in my workplace where women are really, we want to support each other. We want to bring each other up. We want to create a world so that, you know, in 5 years, we are, you know, the majority of people in certain jobs, and we're encouraging each other, and people aren't falling to the wayside because of the additional stresses and additional challenges that women face. So I just encourage you to reach out to other women. And, you know, as everyone on the panel has said too, as you do get certain positions or, you know, start new jobs or new positions, bring those other people up with you, or reach out or give those other women credit, you know, for the work that they do. If you see that they're not being given credit, if they're experiencing something, you know, mentor them in little ways. Because I don't know, personally, I've just seen a shift where there seems to be this collective, like, okay, guys, we're all in this together. Let's support women. And I think it's a real thing that a lot of women are feeling. So, you know, reach out to women in your network or that you've encountered, because I do think people are really, really looking to do that right now. And I don't think that's gonna change. But Liz, did you want to do the quick wheel before we?
Yeah, so thank you for remembering Kathleen. Yeah, for the raffle. I think what I'm going to do, because I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, because we're a little bit after 11, is if people will allow me, I will do a little video with the wheel and send it to all the participants so everybody knows who actually did win and keeps me honest. But I just want to thank you, Kathleen, for getting together this amazing panel. Thank you to Kate, Tara, and Kelly for your expertise. This has been amazing. I typically summarize all the points in the workshops and discussions that I have. And this is one I'll just say, you know what, just watch it again, because it's just, I mean, the nuggets that are in here are amazing. So thank you all.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. And thank you everyone that joined. And I know sometimes it can be intimidating to ask questions on the Zoom. So if anything, you know, if you think of something after the fact, you know, feel free to email Liz, I think, and then she can pass along anything to us as well. But thank you everyone for taking the time, and thanks to Kate, Kelly, and Tara. This was just really great. Thank you all, and have a great day. Enjoy the sun.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and stay tuned. Next month we will have workshops on financial literacy. So I'll let everybody know, but do have a good day, stay safe and be well.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.